achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. On this episode of the show, we're taking a look at the upcoming July 5th UFC 175 event. It will feature not one but two UFC title fights. In the main event, Chris Weidman defends his middleweight title against Lyoto Machida, and in the co-main event, bantamweight champion Ronda Rousey puts her title on the line against challenger Alexis Davis. All of my main card predictions will be available during the episode. All my preliminary predictions will be at kamikazeoverdrive.net, just like the prediction panel. We'll be posting all of their predictions there, so please check that out. My bet packs will also be available for $10, so if you're interested in betting on the event, consider investing $10 to see what I have to say about the betting side of this event. Also, I'd like to announce a very fun and exciting new addition to my website, Sprawl and Brawl Fantasy MMA. A lot of people were asking me about doing the KOPT, the Kamikaze Overdrive Prediction Tournament. This is kind of like a mini one. It takes place over one night. The way it works, you can play for free and see how you stack up, or you can pay $5 and make yourself eligible for the cash prize at the end of the day, and all entry fees go right back into the cash prize. So depending on how many people play, the winner takes the pot home. But I will guarantee you this, $50 is up for grabs regardless. I'm putting $50 of my own money up to pay out. So if you're the only person if only one person signs up to play, you're gonna get $50, and you're gonna only have to pay $5 to get it, regardless of how well you do. The more people that sign up, though, the higher the cash prize goes. Last week, UFC Fight Night 44 was the first time we did it. Eric Hodgson, congratulations to him. He scored 20 points overall, and I'll tell you, he scored points in a moment. He won $65, so it's pretty solid. He was one of the last entries, and you have to make sure you get your predictions in. You send your email in prior to the start of the first fight card. After that, your entry is null and void. Now, the way it works, you go to the section on my website, there's a form there, you go through the only eight fights. The winner gets you 2 points, the method gets you an additional third point. If you pick an upset, and it's clearly denoted, as Eric did on the last show, you double whatever points you score. So you get 4 points for the correct winner and an additional 2 points for the method. So that's a way to pick up some major points. The tiebreakers are on there. Only one winner. There are no ties. So again, 8. It's pretty fun fantasy MMA. I pay the winner out the next day. I contact them. I let them know. Check back on that site. I encourage you to sign up. Again, you might be signing up. The only person who signs up and take home a cool $50. Either way, certainly take a look. It's a trial run. If it does well and has success, I will keep it going on my site. If not, I won't. Again, it's not gambling, it's not betting. You can go perfect on the night, and you might not win a cent, and that's something to keep in mind. Basically, I'm paying out a cash prize to whoever signs up to be the best predictor on that night. So that's what I'm suggesting you try out if you're interested in that. If you email me at kamikazeoverdrive@live.ca if you have any more questions. But now, that's enough for me. Let's get to the first main card prediction. Our opening fight of the pay-per-view takes place in the UFC's bantamweight division as Marcus the Bama Beast Brimage 6-2-0 battles 13-3-0 Russell Doane. Coming into this matchup, this is Doane's second UFC fight, but it's his first pay-per-view appearance, so he's gone from a fight night preliminary match to a pay-per-view appearance right off the bat, so that's a big step up in at least atmosphere. Brimage, though, coming off a 14-month-plus layoff. Now he's cutting 135 pounds for the very first time in his career, which is something to take note of, and he's a former lightweight and a featherweight. He's a fairly muscled guy, fairly heavily muscled, so it'll be interesting to see how his physique looks coming into this, and cardio could be a big question mark if he has a little bit of trouble with the cut. Now, the experience advantage in total fights goes to Doane at 16-8, but as Brimage has fought multiple times in UFC 4 compared to just Doane's just 1. Now, Doane, he debuted in 1 versus a fellow debutant, keep that in mind as well, so it's not exactly like he came in and beat a rostered fighter, but keep in mind he does have a victory over former UFC fighter Jared Papazian, and he fought current UFC fighter Mitrione Tanaka as well, losing that fight. And plus, he also picked up a TKO over winner Tyson Nam in his pro debut, the man who knocked out Bellator champion Eduardo Dantes. Now, Brimage has 3 UFC wins, but they're not the greatest. He beat a tough cast-off in his debut, very inconsistent Maximo Blanco in his second fight, and then a very odd performance from Jimmy Hedis when Brimage beat him in their meeting. He's coming off his first career knockout loss versus Conor McGregor, which is very interesting to take note of, see how he responds there. Now, Marcus, he relies primarily on his hands. He comes from a boxing background. He does have power with 2 pro knockouts. Plus, he got into the Ultimate Fighter house with a single knockout, so he certainly can put guys away if he lands. And I'm hoping, and for his sake, his power needs to translate to the lower weight class better than it did at featherweight and at lightweight. It needs to get there and show up, and that makes him that much more dangerous. He has some decent movement, and he shouldn't have much trouble finding his range here because he was a smaller guy in the featherweight division. He should be able to get in range a little bit easier fighting smaller opponents at bantamweight, so something to keep note of. Now, on average, he landed 5.10 strikes landed per minute against 4.32. So he lands at a high volume, but he also gives up a lot. He gives up, maybe a little bit too much. The point is he's at least landing more, and if his power starts to show up, that'll benefit him. Now, for Russell Doane, he has very decent striking. He continued to land his overhand right against Leandro Issa in his debut, which is one of his weapons of choice. He has 6 wins by knockout overall, including KOing Papazian, who I just mentioned before, with brutal elbow strikes, which Papazian is a very tough guy, and it's a credit to Doane for being able to put him down, which was in the 4th round of a fight, which is pretty impressive. I would think Doane should be the more diverse striker compared to Brimage. Throws some decent kicks, and he's got a very nice stepping knee we'll mix in periodically. But the key to this fight is going to be the ground game. Russell Doane, 5 wins by submission, handled himself extremely well against a very accomplished BJJ player in his debut, survived an early sub attempt, orchestrated a number of sweeps off his back, and eventually submitted Issa, which is a massive feather in his cap. He put him to sleep, in fact. He didn't tap out, he actually put him to sleep with a triangle choke. He showcased excellent hips, he's very strong and close, and that'll be an advantage to him if he can tie Brimage up. Now, Brimage was able to defend multiple takedowns and survive on the ground a couple times against Jimmy Hedis, but again, that was a very odd performance from Hedis, who was looking to stand and bang, got clipped early on and just wasn't himself. Brimage was submitted by Brian Caraway on the show, and he also was tapped out earlier in his career for one of his two career losses. The way I look at it, even if Doane can't submit him, he should be able to score points with some takedowns and some top control time. Plus, I think the threat of being taken down will slow Brimage down in the feet. Irregardless, I really like what I saw to Russell Doane in his debut. In my predictions, Russell Doane to defeat Marcus Brimage by submission. In the middleweight division, we have Uriah Primetime Hall, 9-4-0, battling Thiago Santos, 9-2-0. Now, Uriah Hall, this Uriah Hall experiment continues on. He's trying to find that form that had people really excited on The Ultimate Fighter. But keep in mind, again, on Ultimate Fighter, you're fighting guys who are relatively low level, or at least are not, the big leagues, at least at this point. It's like almost like regional competition, so that kind of maybe plays into why he was so dominant. Santos, I would say, appears to be hand-picked for Uriah. It's a striker versus striker. Hall doesn't have to worry about being taken down, so that's something to keep in mind. Hall seems to lack something mentally. He has all the talent in the world, but that killer instinct just doesn't appear to be there. Now, he did stop Chris Lieben, or at least hurt him bad enough to make him want to quit and eventually ultimately retire. But, against Kelvin Gastelum and against John Howard, there just seemed to be something missing. That ability to take that, convert that energy and that skill and that ability to that lethal fighting edge that puts you over the top. Now, first things first, Hall showed some grappling in his fights against Howard and his fights against Gastelum, and if he chooses to take it, that could be to his advantage here. 4 takedowns in his first 2 UFC fights. He has 2 submission wins overall. It really could throw Santos off by shooting and give him something to think about, which is something to keep in mind if he elects to go that route. I would highly recommend it, at least, especially from his coach's standpoint. Throw something at his opponent that they're not anticipating. Now, Santos is a very good striker, Muay Thai based, solid kicking game, good knees. We saw him hurt Hani Marks and eventually finished him off a nasty body kick that put him down. He stopped his final pretty tough opponent with an absolutely beautiful head kick that put him down as well. He's very similar almost to Edson Barboza in his style. Not a ton of footwork. He can be a little bit stationary, but he, up on the balls of his feet. At least he's very, amped up. Throws a lot with a lot of power, very sharp edge to his striking. And the only issue though is if he's standing right in front of Hall, trading with him, not mixing up enough, it's going to give Hall a chance to set up his strikes. Hall, though, 5 wins by knockout plus multiple tough stoppages. Most opponents in at least the Ultimate Fighter seemed defeated before the fight actually began. They seemed like they were already in that mentality. This fight is over before it starts. But Uriah Hall, nonetheless, denying the talent, it's certainly there. Solid kicking game, good combinations. The ability to read and react to opponents' attacks is very impressive. Now, he can be very creative, throws a lot of spinning kicks, keeps opponents guessing, which is something that can really throw a guy off. But he needs to maintain his volume. Don't sit back and admire your work. Don't just throw a couple strikes here and there or enjoy ducking and getting out of the way of strikes. Don't let your opponent outwork him, and that's something to keep in mind here. Should feel right at home against an opponent that's willing to stand and trade, and he should benefit from that. Both guys have been knocked out once. Hall was knocked out by the current middleweight champion, who will be fighting tonight. But either way, Santos is no slouch. Keep this in mind. Santos is no slouch, and if Hall isn't on his game, Santos is more than capable of outstriking him, possibly even stopping him. But my prediction is Uriah Hall to defeat Thiago Santos by TKO. Now we've got a very interesting matchup in the UFC's heavyweight division as the number 12 ranked Stefan Skyscraper Struve, 29-6-0, battle 7-3-0 Matt Mitrione. Struve's returning after a 16-month layoff, and he's overcoming a heart condition that could have ended his career, certainly was career-threatening. His last fight was a brutal knockout loss versus Mark Hunt, while Mitrione last fight was a knockout win over Sean Jordan. Physically, as always the case with Stefan Struve, he's the taller man, 7 feet tall. He'll have a 9-inch height advantage, but just a 1-inch reach advantage. Matt Mitrione is no slouch in the size department. And in fact, Mitrione is the better athlete. He has above average speed for a heavyweight, and he uses more movement than most do. So that's something couple things to keep in mind. Now, looking at how these guys, how this fight could play out, both men have paths to victory and areas of extreme vulnerability. Struve's been knocked out violently 5 times. 4 in the UFC: Mark Hunt, Travis Brown, Roy Nelson, Junior Dos Santos. All those guys throw absolute power. So it's not surprising in the heavyweight division when you get hit by those guys, you do go down. Mitrione, though, 6 wins by knockouts. He's no slouch either. The last 4 wins have all come by stoppage. Sean Jordan, Philip DeFries, Christian Moorcraft, and Tim Hague. The last 3 are a little bit iffy, no longer with the promotion. The Sean Jordan knockout was pretty impressive. Now, for Mitrione to win this fight, he needs to be mobile. Get in, get out. He's got some very hard leg kicks. Batter Struve's legs with those shots. Various speeds up and attacks. Keep Struve from timing you and really throw Stefan Struve off. Put some of those shots on Struve's chin. Keep him from settling in and keep him moving backwards as well. He's not nearly as effective when he's going backwards. Now, Struve, he's very good on the feet. He's technically sound kickboxer. He has power, 8 wins by knockout. Doesn't use his range all that well, at least the last time we saw him he didn't. He allowed guys like Pat Barry and Mark Hunt, who were very short in stature, to get inside and land surprisingly. Stipe Miocic and not Ed Herman, but the Pee Wee Herman, it's escaping me at this moment, landed with regularity. Especially Miocic had a lot of success before that fight kind of turned against him, which was pretty impressive in that fight. Now, Struve, he gets hit more than he lands, and he seems to have trouble getting comfortable. He's kind of a slow starter. It takes him almost a round to find his groove, and that's something against Matt Mitrione, who has the ability to put guys down, as we saw in the Sean Jordan fight. You do not want to let Mitrione land against you with regularity. Now, Matt was KO'd by Roy Nelson, but again, Roy Nelson, a whole other level of power. And I don't think that's the type of power Struve can generate. But Struve, he did stop Herman, and he did stop Miocic. So, and a win over Stipe Miocic is certainly nothing to sneeze at, as we've seen of late. Now, for Mitrione, his big area of vulnerability is that questionable grappling defense, submitted by Brendan Schaub. And a lot of people laugh at Brendan Schaub's grappling skills, but nonetheless, he's still a very capable grappler. Mitrione was also out-grappled by Czech Congo in that matchup. And Stefan Struve, 16 wins by submission. He's a BJJ brown belt, and those long limbs can make him a nightmare for anyone on the mat. And his top position ground and pound is absolutely ferocious. And when he starts landing on guys, and the way he can posture up and with that massive height, it's so hard to control his posture. He can get a lot behind his shots and do a ton of damage. Now, Mitrione has a 57% takedown defense. He has been taken down in 6 of his 10 UFC fights, which is a major concern. He really seemed... when he fought Congo, you really seemed to struggle with the clinch and tying up with Congo. Really didn't know what to do in those situations, and it really seemed to take him out of the fight. He was taken down by Brendan Schaub with relative ease, and he actually moved himself right into the Darce choke. He put himself in a position to be submitted, which, again, something against Struve you do not want to do. Struve's takedown skills are not their traditional wrestling style shoot, but if he can get in the clinch, he can orchestrate a nice trip, and he will pull guard, certainly, and go to work. We saw him sweep Mark Hunt a couple of times. I'm not 100% sure if you want a big man like Matt Mitrione on top of you dropping some shots. We saw Christian Moorcraft have some success against Stefan Struve when he got in the top position and started raining down blows. Now, Struve, he's been putting some work in his off time to improve his striking, which he needs to do. He's very young. He still has the ability to develop and change his skills. The 5 knockouts is a major concern. He needs to improve his use of his reach. He seemed to be doing that for the Brown fight, but Mark Hunt, that fight was just sloppy, but it was entertaining, but sloppy to say the least. Struve, he has to get off to a good start. He's a bit of a slow starter, but he does know how to rally in the event he does not get the start he wanted. Mitrione can win this fight on the feet, absolutely. But for Struve, he can win this fight both on the feet and the floor. His chin is a concern, so is the layoff. But Struve's grappling looked underwhelming at times against Mark Hunt. But I think he has the ability here to give Matt Mitrione trouble. And my prediction is Stefan Struve to defeat Matt Mitrione by submission. Ronda Rousey will once again be putting her title on the line in the UFC's women's bantamweight title as the champion, undefeated with a record of 9-0, battles the number 2 ranked fighter in the division, Canadian Alexis Davis, carrying a record of 16 wins and 5 losses. Now, Ronda Rousey's arguably one of the most talked about UFC fighters on the roster today. She's talked about recently looking to take a break. She seems to be a little bit burnt out, maybe. Also, the fighting, the press, all the attention, plus her Hollywood movie acting career. There's a lot going on there. I wonder if there are some distractions. Now, as I said, she's undefeated. She's coming off her first non-armbar finish, which was a executed knee to the body of Sarah McMahon that dropped her and eventually led Rousey to put her away. One thing Rousey, though, she's been talking a lot of trash recently about BJJ players, saying she could beat any one of them, and we've seen a couple articles where the BJJ players have stepped up and said, yeah, really, let's see what you got here. But keep in mind, Liz Carmouche had her in some serious trouble when she took her back, and she had a neck crank on, and that's something to keep in mind here, as, that was a situation where Ronda Rousey certainly looked human, let's say the least here. Now, Davis is a BJJ black belt. Never been submitted. 7 wins by submission. And she said she will get out of any armbar attempt that Rousey throws at her, which are extremely big words when you're the challenger taking on someone who's been so successful and so dominant in the fashion she has. Now, Davis is a real veteran of the sport. She's been active since 2007, 21 career bouts. She's not going to be starstruck. She's not going to be afraid to get in there and mix it up with Rousey. She's 3-0 in the UFC, 8-1 in her last 9 fights. Their only loss, a very entertaining one back in Strikeforce against Sarah Kaufman. And she's beat some serious names: Carmouche, Nunes, Baszler, Kedzie, Akano. All very, very impressive names, to say the least, that Davis has come out on top of in recent memory. Now, she has been taken down, but she's very comfortable on the mat because she's so good at BJJ. She won't panic. She has good transitions when she does go to the floor, off her back and from top position. She also, from top position, will set up her submissions or grind out the position and do some damage. Doesn't need the ground game to win fights, though. She's more than capable of competing on her feet. Now, Rousey, we all know what she's all about. She's a decorated 4th Dan Judo black belt, Olympic medalist in Judo, incredibly gifted grappler. Her takedown stats are unreal. She averages almost 8 takedowns a fight at a 70% completion rate. Again, that has a lot to do with how quickly she's able to put people on the floor. And with what success. Her throws are unbelievable. Big throws, extremely strong hips. We saw in the Miesha Tate fight, she was doing those suicidal throws where she put herself in a bad position and sacrificed position to get the fight to the ground. And because she knew she could counter Tate and take advantage of the position and get herself to a better spot. The question is, can she do that against Alexis Davis, who's very good on the ground and a far better grappler, at least a BJJ technician, than Miesha Tate? Now, with Rousey, she can orchestrate her armbar out of almost any position, but she really likes the mounted position, land some ground and pound, force her opponent to cover up, and then take an arm as soon as it's exposed. Now, Miesha Tate, though, in the second fight, she showed you can go to the ground with Ronda, and it's not instant death. She survived multiple positions and had some decent moments against Rousey on the mat, eventually succumbing to the submission. Now, you flip the script and you go to standing. Ronda's striking. She's trying to promote herself as being an elite level striker. She did land some solid knee to the liver of McMahon and put her down, but to me, she's still a little bit stiff. She's not nearly as good as everybody would like to believe she is, or at least she's promoting herself as. But she's not like a Brock Lesnar-style fighter who's afraid to take a shot. She seems more than willing to get in there and throw down with her opposition, which is, it's something, that's noteworthy. And I think her skills will continue to improve and continue to round itself out. Now, Davis, she can strike. She's only 2-2 in fights ended by knockout. Those 2 losses came very early in her career, including her pro debut against Sarah Kaufman. But she's really been improving her striking of late. She lands some big leg kicks against Liz Carmouche, throws some solid volume. She will brawl. Her second fight with Sarah Kaufman under the Strikeforce banner was a fantastic fight, and she can take a punch. She is not afraid to get in there. She is a hard person to hurt, and that's noteworthy as well, because Ronda Rousey, I don't think is going to be able to put her down like she did to Sarah McMahon. The jury, again, is still out on Ronda striking. Again, I want to see her go for a prolonged period of time with someone who can stand and bang with her. I'd say she needs to get this fight to the ground. And the question, again, can Davis survive? And that's a big question mark, as no one has been able to, that's gone to the ground, survive, as they've all eventually been caught. Cardio issues for Ronda are a potential. Davis is 7-3 in decisions. She has gone 5 rounds once, which Ronda Rousey has never done. She's gone a full 3 in each of her last 3 fights, but we've seen Rousey go longer against Tate, at least, which showed she's not going to run out of gas, at least in that type of fight. Davis is a very good grappler, but for me, I still think Ronda's going to find some success with her takedowns and eventually work her way to a submission. Davis is a far greater challenge than the odds would suggest, but my prediction is Ronda Rousey to return to form and defeat Alexis Davis by submission. In the main event of the night, we are in the UFC's middleweight division as the champion, Chris Weidman, undefeated with a record of 11-0, battles the number 3 ranked former light heavyweight champion, Lyoto the Dragon Machida, with a record of 21 wins and just 4 losses. Now, this is the is the post-Silva era actually starting the middleweight division. The last 2 fights involved him, including the title defense for Weidman, so still he was involved. It's the first time the middleweight title fight has taken place that didn't include Silva, and we have to go all the way back to March 4th, 2006, which was UFC 58, where David Loiseau lost to then-champion Rich Franklin in a pretty interesting matchup. That was the last time we had a fight that did not include Anderson Silva in the middleweight title. Now, a lot of questions coming into this. Did Weidman get a chance to step up and face Silva when Silva was fading at the end of his career, at the end of his run? Was one or both wins by fluke? Depending on who you ask, it's yes and no, or yes or no. It's very, up in the air. I'm not going to get into that debate here. But, you look at Weidman, he's slowly worked his way up to the rank of opponents, and it's been a nice progression. So, the first, not the first opponent he faced, but Tom Lawler, the first real noteworthy opponent before, I guess, Alexis in his debut. But Tom Lawler, the Damian Maia, to Mark Munoz, to Anderson Silva twice, and now Machida, which is the next evolution of opponent for the champion. Machida, though, on the other side, has faced the best of the best. He's 2-0 at middleweight, winning fights against Mark Munoz and Gegard Mousasi. He fought John Jones, the light heavyweight title, and lost. He also beat Rashad Evans when he cashed the light heavyweight title in his first shot at the champ. He's made a career of beating wrestlers. Keep that in mind here. Tito Ortiz, Rashad Evans, Randy Couture, Ryan Bader, Dan Henderson, Mark Munoz. He did lose to Phil Davis in a controversial fashion, but nonetheless, his record against wrestlers is very solid. The approach for both men is clear. For Machida, he's going to look to stay on the outside, attack, and then capitalize on the mistakes or openings. For Weidman, he wants to land with power, put Machida on his back, and either look for that giant ground and pound or possibly his submission game, which is very good. Big issue with Machida's style, though, is that sometimes he doesn't engage enough in the judges' eyes. It happened against Phil Davis, and it happened against Rampage Jackson as well. He's elusive, and it makes his opponents aggressive. They might not be landing, but they're coming forward, and it's winning points with the judges, and that really can cost him in the eyes, on the scorecards, especially in a 5-round fight if he doesn't do enough and Weidman's constantly pursuing and attacking. Weidman's striking is getting better by leaps and bounds. He showed his power in the knockout of Anderson Silva. When he knocked out Mark Munoz with an elbow, he showed that technique and that ability to, his finesse style which is absolutely fantastic. The question is he good enough to hang with Lyoto Machida on the feet? Keep in mind when he beat Anderson Silva was clowning and goofing around. In the second fight showed was kind of a fluke, I'd say, at least with the leg breaking. Either way, Machida's not going to clown. Machida's going to be all business and be in there and look to execute and not give Weidman anything free. Weidman, the way I look at it, he's got to get this fight to the floor. He's going to be looking to take it down. He took Silva down and landed some solid shots from top position and really hurt him and really buzzed his ear there, and that's something to keep in mind as well. Machida, he's very hard to take down. He's got that sumo background. He's a BJJ black belt. 80% takedown defense. Phil Davis, who's an excellent wrestler and a very big man, only took Machida down twice on 10 attempts, and Machida's never been taken down more than twice in any UFC fight, so keep that in mind as well. The distance will be key to Machida, forcing Weidman to cover distance before shooting. And the question is, can Machida be timed, though, when he comes forward? When he does look to close the distance and engage, can Weidman time him and land a big shot? We saw Shogun did that, tested his, and hurt him. And, a lot of people saying Machida's chin maybe isn't as good as everyone expects it to be. He just hasn't been hit enough to really expose it. Now, John Jones, though, had a ton of trouble when he fought Machida, until he clinched up with him, until he got his hands on him, controlled him, implemented his size and grappling, and eventually submitted him. I think that's something Weidman needs to do and look at here. With the wrestler, with the champ, cardio is a big question, I think. He seemed like he was slowing down in the second round of the very first Anderson Silva fight. His shot wasn't there, and Anderson had no problem shrugging it off in the second round. And against Machida, who's going to be forcing you to come forward and chase, if that becomes an issue, Weidman's not going to last very long in this fight, or at least he won't be able to fight at the top, performance that he would like. He was also a little bit of an issue there. He was struggling to land against Anderson before he knocked him out again. Anderson was clowning with him, but the speed just was not there for Weidman, and Machida's a very fast fighter as well, and that could cause issues as well. Interesting scenario for Weidman coming off beating Anderson Silva, the greatest of all time, in back-to-back fights. Is this a bit of a letdown? He's got to gear himself up as his first post-Silva title defense. If he loses the belt here, that's a major knock on his legacy. Yes, he's young. Yes, he'll get multiple opportunities to get it back in the future. But still, all he's accomplished could be at least partially wiped out with a loss in this matchup. I actually really like the challenger's chances to win this fight. I like what Machida does with his striking, and I think we're going to see him land some big shots, really test Chris Weidman's chin. And my prediction is Lyoto Machida to defeat Chris Weidman by knockout and become the new UFC middleweight champion. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 175, taking a new middleweight champion. Almost took a new bantamweight champion for the women. I opted out of it. I feeling that Ronda should be able to get the better of Alexis Davis. Davis will give her trouble and will surprise some with her efforts. Nonetheless, make sure you check out all of my preliminary predictions at KamikazeOverdrive.net, and please sign up for the Sprawl and Brawl competition. I think it's a lot of fun. If you're not a heavy gambler but still want to have a chance to win a little bit of cash, $5, and predict your fights, write them down, see how you do. It makes the night more interesting, and certainly can make some of those preliminary fights really exciting. And with the upset situation, it gives you an opportunity to score a few more points where maybe your opponents are not taking those risks. Either way, you're guaranteed $50 if you're the only person to sign up, and regardless of how well you do, if only one person signs up, they're winning $50. Either way, the pot could be big. I'm hoping it could be a couple $100 this week, but no way to tell until the people start signing up. Either way, head over to KamikazeOverdrive.net and check it out. As always, thank you very much for listening. Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions.